Silver just did something it hasn't done in months. It fell more than 10% in 48 hours. And buried inside the exchange mechanics right now is a warning so quiet, so precise, and so utterly ignored by the financial press that by the time most people read about it, the move will already be over. There's a particular kind of silence that precedes the loudest events in financial history. It is not the silence of calm. It is the silence of accumulation. The silence of a pressure that has nowhere to go except everywhere all at once. Silver is sitting inside that silence right now, and the data to prove it is published every single day by the exchange itself. Free, public, and almost entirely unread by the people who need it most. Silver is trading near $76 per ounce this Monday morning, May 18th, 2026. That is roughly where it closed on Friday. 2 consecutive sessions of extraordinary selling pressure have pushed it down from a high above $87 reached just days ago, erasing weeks of hard-won gains in a matter of hours. If you are someone who has spent your life watching the financial press sell you paper illusions while the physical reality drains away, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up, because what I am about to show you is the exact mechanism they use to hide the truth. If you watched the gold to silver ratio blow out from 53.6 to 1 all the way to 58.9 to 1 in a single Friday session, and you felt confused, you were absolutely right to feel that way. What drove that violent move had almost nothing to do with silver itself. Look at what just happened. April consumer prices came in at 3.8% year over year, the hottest reading since mid-2023. Producer prices posted their sharpest single-month acceleration since early 2022. For months, institutional money had been quietly building their portfolios on the assumption that the Federal Reserve was going to cut rates. They bet billions on the idea that money was about to get cheaper. But then the inflation data hit, and the market tracking tools wiped out those bets, assigning a near zero probability to any rate reduction in 2026. Traders started openly discussing a December rate hike. 2-year Treasury yields climbed to a 14-month high in a single session. The dollar surged, and silver plummeted. The chain of causation was logical, swift, and completely brutal. But here is what the inflation narrative misses, and what the financial press will spend the next 2 weeks failing to explain to you. The macro shock that hit silver on Thursday and Friday did not change a single molecule of the physical reality underneath this market. The deficit is still running, the inventory is still depleted, the exchange mechanics are still tightening, and the June delivery clock is still ticking toward a date that is now exactly 9 business days away. To truly understand why this matters, you have to understand the psychology of the people who are currently dumping silver. You have to understand the illusion of liquidity. To an algorithm, or a hedge fund manager sitting behind a wall of monitors in Manhattan, silver is nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet. It is a non-yielding asset. It generates no interest, it pays no dividend, and it offers no coupon. In a financial portfolio, its direct competitor is anything that pays a return. When Treasury bonds start yielding 4.5%, every single day you hold an ounce of silver instead of a bond, you are losing money on paper. Every basis point of rising interest rates increases the opportunity cost of holding the metal. So when the rate outlook violently shifted last week, the mathematics dictated immediate liquidation. It was not deliberate, thoughtful repositioning. It was forced margin calls. It was leverage liquidations and algorithmic stop losses triggering in sequence across compressed timeframes. It is the exact same behavioral panic we saw in the banking sector in 2008. And during the 1980 silver crash, Wall Street sells the paper, assuming the physical world will simply bend to their spreadsheets. They trade the ghost of the asset, completely blind to the actual atoms sitting in the vault. And why did this inflation narrative suddenly rear its head? Because of energy. The Strait of Hormuz has been functionally restricted since late February. Approximately 25% of the world's seaborne oil transits that narrow waterway. When you choke that artery, everything that requires shipping, manufacturing, or heating pays more. That cost bleeds into producer prices first, then it hits the consumer with a lag. The Federal Reserve cannot print more oil. The central bank leadership cannot reopen a maritime strait with an interest rate hike. All they can do is suppress demand to match a broken supply chain. This macro shock hit the paper price of silver, driving it down to $76, a massive 37% drop from January's all-time high of $121.64. But if you peel back the paper curtain and look at the mechanical reality of the exchange, a terrifying picture emerges. The commodity exchange is where the global price of silver gets set. But it is not where solar panel manufacturers go to buy their raw materials. It's a futures market where financial contracts change hands in volumes that dwarf the physical world entirely. Each standard contract represents 5,000 troy ounces. Historically, between 97 and 99% of those contracts never result in anyone actually taking delivery of the metal. They are settled in cash or rolled forward to the next month. The entire global pricing mechanism relies on one foundational, unspoken gentleman's agreement. The assumption that when the contract matures, the holder will take the cash and leave the metal in the vault. Now, consider what happens when you map that fragile assumption against the actual numbers sitting in the exchange right now. Total silver open interest across all delivery months stands at approximately 575 million ounces. But the registered inventory, the actual physical silver sitting in exchange-approved warehouses carrying the legal warrants that make it immediately deliverable, is somewhere between 80 and 90 million ounces. Let that sink in. The paper market has made legally binding commitments for 575 million ounces against a physical pool capable of honoring maybe 80 million of them. The rest runs purely on faith. And the ratio that insiders use to track this tension, the coverage ratio, is flashing red. The coverage ratio is simply the registered inventory divided by the total outstanding paper claims. Anytime this number drops below 15%, the system historically enters delivery stress. It triggers episodes where a shortage of available physical metal forces aggressive price dislocations that the paper market alone never would have generated. Right now, the coverage ratio sits at 15.7%, paper leverage is at 6.4 times, and we are exactly 9 business days away from the first notice day for the June contract. They cannot just dig more out of the ground to fix this math. We are living through our 6th consecutive year of a structural supply deficit. The silver industry reports confirm a projected shortfall of 46.3 million ounces for this year alone. Since 2021, the world has consumed approximately 762 million ounces from above-ground stockpiles. That is 750 million ounces gone. Nearly a full year of total global mine production consumed from reserves in just 5 years. You might be thinking, if the price was at $121 in January, why do the mining companies not just produce more? Because they cannot. Approximately 70% of all global silver production is a byproduct. It comes out of the ground when companies are mining for copper, zinc, or lead. Those massive industrial operations respond to the economics of the primary metal. Silver just comes along for the ride. And even if a company wanted to open a new primary silver mine today, the development timeline from discovery to production is 7 to 15 years. Every dollar silver earned in its massive rally through 2025 will not produce meaningful new mine supply before the early 2030s at the absolute earliest. The structural gap cannot be closed on any timeline that matters between now and July. To make matters even more volatile, we just saw a massive disruption out of the East that almost nobody in the mainstream press is talking about. India just raised its import tariffs on gold and silver from 6% to 15%. That is a 150% increase in the cost of bringing silver into the world's second largest physical demand market. Indian household buying around festival seasons has been the bedrock of physical demand. When you hike the tariff that aggressively, you create massive near-term friction. It raises costs for regional banks, slows import timelines, and temporarily reduces volume. This fundamental friction landed at exactly the moment the Western paper market was absorbing the inflation sell signal. It was the perfect storm to drive the price down. But friction is temporary, scarcity is permanent, and the exchange warning is about to graduate from background noise to an active market event. In 9 business days, every single entity holding an open June contract faces a binary decision. They can roll their position into July, they can close it for cash, or they can stand and demand physical delivery of actual silver. The historical norm says most will take the paper route. But what happens if they look at silver near $76? Look at a registered pool that is 40% smaller than it was 8 months ago, and decide that this artificially crushed price is the greatest accumulation opportunity they will ever see? We don't have to guess what that looks like. We saw it in January of 2026. Delivery demand spiked modestly above expectations, and in a single 7-day window, 33.45 million ounces were withdrawn from the registered inventory. 26% of the entire deliverable pool was gone in 1 week, and it was never meaningfully replenished. Analysts estimate that at current registered levels, if we see an event with even half the intensity of January, 20% of the deliverable pool will vanish inside a single week. That mathematics doesn't resolve quietly. It results in a collision between the people who trade paper illusions and the people who hold the physical truth. So where does that leave us for the final days of May, 2026? The stage is set for 2 starkly different realities to play out, and neither of them will give you time to react once the momentum starts moving. The first scenario is the macro capitulation. If the Federal Reserve minutes released tomorrow afternoon show a central bank that was already turning hawkish before this hot inflation data even arrived, the paper markets will panic. Algorithmic sell programs will blindside the remaining long positions, fracturing the immediate support floor at $75. From there, a swift drop to $73 becomes an immediate reality, opening the trapdoor toward $70 as forced institutional liquidations run their course. If this happens, the structural reality of the physical deficit will simply be pushed into the background, forcing true believers to wait until late 2026 or even 2027 for the pricing mismatch to correct itself. But then there is the second scenario, the structural flashpoint. Beginning May 28th, when the first notice day arrives, we will see the real hands reveal themselves. If the entities holding those June contracts look past the Wall Street noise, look at $76 as a gift, and demand their physical metal, the system cracks. With the coverage ratio hovering at a fragile 15.7%, it would only take a fraction of those contracts demanding delivery to spark an immediate run on the remaining 80 to 90 million ounces in the registered vaults. It is a high-stakes game of musical chairs where there are over 6 times as many paper claims as there are physical chairs. When the music stops, the paper shorts will be forced to bid any price necessary to acquire the physical atoms they promised but do not own. The financial system is built on the comforting lie that a paper promise is just as good as the real thing, right up until the day the vault door swings open and reveals nothing but empty space. If this breakdown of the hidden mechanics changed how you see the global markets, make sure to subscribe and leave a comment below with your path. The data is out there, and your only job is to read it before the rest of the world wakes up.